Hi, my name is Kristen Carreone, and my favorite thing is Dramione fan fiction.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome back to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones. It is Sunday, August 1st, 2021. And you know what that means. It's my mom's birthday. And in a few more days, August 5th, it's my dad's birthday. So my nephew and I are going to do a one-day road trip down to my sister's house to see our family. We're really excited to zip down, spend some time in the pool, hear about how my nephew's time at camp was, and how get my other nephew ready for band camp, for marching band, swim, and just hang out. So it has been a good week here in Chicago. I continue to get all the tests associated with starting my breast cancer treatment. So that was a bone scan this week. And next up is one more MRI because every scan finds something new that has to be verified that it's nothing. And so it just continues. I will say that I'm nervous. Chicago hosted Lollapalooza this weekend. Is still hosting Lollapalooza. It's 100,000 young people at an outdoor venue, and then just packing the trains, and none of them are wearing masks by the end of the day, even if they took them at the beginning of the day. And the Delta variant is ramping up in Chicago and other places. And so I'm concerned that my treatment is going to get pushed back because of the people being irresponsible with the Delta variant. So I am frustrated, but I have a really good team, and Northwestern takes COVID precautions very seriously. And so ultimately I will be fine. I was in a comic anthology, a graphic medicine anthology called Menopause, a Comic Treatment. And last week we won an Eisner Award. Eisners are like the Oscars of comic books. And I am now in an anthology that won Best Anthology of 2020, won the Eisner. And that's really exciting. There's going to be they're going to publish a second edition, or another round of them, hopefully this time with the Eisner sticker on front. So you can still get copies. Women and Children's First in Chicago, as of today, has 2 copies left. And more and more people I know are talking about menopause. And get that book if you can find it available near you. So with that, I'm going to pack my car and start driving. Wear your masks, people. Encourage the vaccine hesitant in your life to get a vaccine. We have to take care of each other in this pandemic. So do what you can to convince people that the vaccine is safe and that our community's survival depends on it. So this week I've got Kristen Carreone. She is another friend from the Dose Cord, and we are talking about Dramione fan fiction. So Draco Malfoy, Hermione Granger, what would happen if they were a couple? Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where We learn about people's favorite things and we get recommendations without using an algorithm. This week, the tour of the dose cord continues. I am so pleased to have another one of the women of the Doughboys fan community with us today. Her name is Kristen Carreone. She is the host of the podcast Highway to Hell, a supernatural podcast. Originally, she was recommended to Finding Favorites by folks in the Dose Cord to talk about Twilight. But she said, no, I've got lots of other things I can talk about. Kristen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Leah. Thank you so much for having me on. As the other dose quarters know, I love to talk about everything that I love and and leave no, space for breathing, essentially.
Outstanding. Then we're going to have a good time. I'm curious, where in this great world are you today?
So I live in San Antonio, Texas. Though you may have, I've mentioned it whenever I can that I'm not a Texan. I'm a Southern Californian surfer dude by nature. But yeah, I've been here now for about 10 years.
Okay. So you live in San Antonio, but you're a SoCal surfer dudette.
That's right.
What is your in and out order?
Oh, again, Doughboys has really influenced me on that. I get a double animal style with those raw onions as well.
Okay.
Farming style. It's delicious. And it depends on my mood. I love the fries. I defend them. So I will get them plain or animal style, either which way.
Nice. I have had In-N-Out a few times. I'm in Chicago, as my online name suggests. And I just feel like it is impossible to eat the fries before they get cold.
It's true.
I'll get a large fries. I love French fries. And then you have to eat them so fast. Otherwise, you just have cold potatoes on your plate.
It's true. I'm usually eating them in the car because of this reason. But yeah, I mean, I just love the taste. They're tasty. I'll add a little bit of salt because I don't have enough blood cholesterol. And I think they're delicious. But you're right. Yeah, they do get really cold too fast. And I understand folks when they say that it's not their favorite. My husband does not like them. He's not a fan.
Yeah. I'm not going to turn them down. I'm not going to turn my nose up at them, but that's my only complaint. It's kind of like a steak and shake. Anywhere that it's like those like stick like fries. I'm like, I just need them to retain heat a little bit longer.
It's true. Yeah. They need to invent a better system to insulate that heat.
So how are things in San Antonio? You're not a Texan, but San Antonio has like a beautiful river walk. That's all I remember about San Antonio. I mean, San Antonio is a good food city, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. People love the breakfast tacos here. That's the thing to get here. The flour tortillas and bean and cheese tacos and puffy tacos. And there's obviously Tex-Mex here, a great variety of that. So yeah, it is delicious food. It's really rich, very different than like the Mexican food itself is very different from like Southern Californian Mexican. And I've gone into long diatribes with my coworkers about this and why there's a difference. And the main reason I think after much research on Google is that I think in California you have better access to fresh seafood and fresh ingredients. There's a larger variety of like fresh food, whereas here it's like cover it in all of the cheese that you can. And we'll gobble it up.
Yeah, and like a Chicago Mexican food is much more leans heavily into chicken, pork, and beef.
Okay.
Right? Like you can get fish tacos, but for the most part it leans into like the Midwest agriculture, I think, of the meats that are in it here.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And pretty heavy on the cheese as well.
And then the flour tortillas here, you know, they're like small things, kind of thick. And back home, the flour tortillas are primarily like for burritos. So they're larger in size and thinner. And it's, I think, more commonplace to have like a corn tortilla over there than a flour over here. So, you know, those are kind of things that I needed to acclimate to when I first moved here, and, you know, fought just as much as like In-N-Out versus Whataburger.
Right.
Fought over, you know, with my in-laws.
Oh man, that's outstanding. Tell me a little bit about your podcast. So it's HWY, Highway to Hell, a supernatural podcast. Mm-hmm. Do you have a co-host? Are you rewatching the whole? I mean, this show has been on for 14, 15 years, a long time.
Yeah. It's, there's 15 seasons. It finally ended last year. Mm-hmm. And I do have a co-host. Her name is Christine, which is not, you know, confusing at all. Kristen and Christine. Yeah, we started the podcast like 4 years ago, and it's really my fault because I had never seen Supernatural. I was a huge Buffy fan. I am a huge Buffy fan, and I still have yet to listen to your episode on that. But, you know, I kept on hearing like, oh, you should really watch Supernatural if you're a Buffy fan. And I was very against that because I remember Supernatural took the time slot of Angel when Angel was canceled. And I was like very upset about that as a like 14-year-old.
So you hold grudges.
I held that grudge for a long time. And finally, I just gave it a shot. And it took me a while. It took me until like season 2. And then I just like really loved it. And I figured out, okay, this is why people like love this show. So the premise of the podcast is Christine has never seen the show. And so we're watching it together. She's watching it for the first time. It is episode by episode, where we've done up to season 6. And now we're on this really long accidental hiatus just because our lives are so busy right now.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot more to go. And so we're trying to figure out how to attack the rest, because it's quite a bit. Have you ever seen an episode?
I have seen, I think I saw the pilot and I was like, because it was
2005.
So I feel like it was a night where I watched Gilmore Girls and then a Supernatural. And I was like, this is too scary. I'm out. It was whatever episode I saw. And I'm pretty sure it was just the pilot. And I was like, this is too scary. This show is not for me. And then every 5 years, I say to myself, wow, that's still on TV? That's still on TV? But I like Doctor Who. I liked The Boys. I watch other scary, you know, like space travel or supernatural. Like, I watch other scary, gory shows. I don't know why I was like, no, that show's too scary for me.
I think the pilot and season 1 in general, they're like trying to be really scary. And then the show kind of evolves a little bit. And it's strange because like I don't love it on the same level as like Buffy, say, but it's also kind of easier to talk about it because of that fact.
Right.
Because, you know, we can be very critical about it. And I don't know if I could be critical about Buffy, you know, if that would quite work out with the podcast. It would just be a lot of fangirling, essentially.
Yeah. Which is, you know, it's also fine to talk about the things you love and just love them.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yes.
So,
yeah, my episode about Buffy is kind of, we're tackling the question, what do you do when it turns out the creator is trash?
Ugh,
right?
Yeah.
When you find out that someone who made a beloved piece of pop culture in your life is like not just an asshole, but is an abusive asshole.
Yes.
So we were talking about leadership themes from Buffy, and you know that one of them is is like, we were debating whether or not, well, essentially, like, she was like, well, don't have heroes. And I was like, I don't think the answer is don't have heroes. I think the answer is don't have idols. That when Joss Whedon is an idol, then it's a much harder fall. You can have heroes. I think we have to have heroes.
Right. Yeah.
But I think idolizing or lionizing is where it gets into trouble. So.
Yeah, I kind of got into a similar discussion with one of my professors because I have a bachelor's degree in English and then a master's degree in English. And for my master's, one of the first classes, I wrote a paper on Buffy and the use of oh God, I'm forgetting the specific individual or like critical theory, but it was regarding like the female writing, female speech, essentially. And, you know, my professor argued that like Buffy can't be a feminist show because of the creator.
Because it's written by a man.
Because it's written by a man. Which, you know, is tough because also there's a lot of other writers that worked on Buffy as well. And, you know, it's a whole thing to get into, but, yeah, that was kind of her. She very, very much disagreed with like my concept of Buffy herself as being a feminist hero because of that.
Wow. Did you do a lot of pop culture writing and exploration in your master's program, or was that a class that like happened to allow you that paper?
It more happened to allow me because other classes were more focused on specific literary periods. Yeah, I wrote that. I've written a paper on how Harry Potter is like the modern day mythology. It follows all of the Jungian archetypes and you know, etc.
Yeah.
So there are those like few where I get to kind of have fun.
Nice.
Where I did.
Yeah. Are you does a master's in English mean that you're teaching now, or?
No, so I in my bachelor's degree I sought a concentration in technical writing.
Okay.
And then in my master's degree I got a graduate certificate in linguistics and focused heavily on forensic linguistics.
Ooh.
Because I work in policy analysis. And so you know, I could have like gone into rhetoric and composition and that could have like directly related, but I was like so fascinated with forensic linguistics and all of the things you can do with that. Yeah.
So what is, because I have friends that did composition and rhetoric and they are like they're working and running college writing centers and helping grow young writers. So do you work and however much or little you actually want to say about your day job, just be like, no, we're done, Leah, out. So are you doing you're doing policy analysis now with that ish?
Sort of like, so I started out doing technical writing only. And so that was like creating forms, creating standard operating procedures, that sort of work. And then they gave me the policy analysis as well. So I work for an agency that works with federal regulations. So basically my job was to take the federal regulations and translate them into policies and procedures that our staff then follow. And so now I kind of oversee all of that, but do primarily still work with all of the policy.
Neat. Yeah, it sounds like I have a friend she's in Pennsylvania and she's often on Facebook. She's like, you know, writing policy on like more inclusive language for Family Medical Leave Act. Like, how do you express to people that no matter how children came into the house, they can take family leave?
Yes.
It's adoption, it's fostering, it's kinship placement. So like she was like, how can I succinctly describe that everyone has access to this benefit?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there are things like that that still come up, right? Especially in light of, the COVID-19 pandemic
Mm-hmm.
and such a great need for additional resources during this time, especially in my line of work. It it really called to question some of the policies that we've had in place for, a long time, and it was kind of like putting on another lens and saying, well, why do we do this? It's not
Mm-hmm.
really very fair. It's not, um we're in a service category, and we're not, this policy is not servicing our people, our
Yeah.
clients, as much as it could.
Right.
So,
Oh, that's really neat. That's a really, it's so important. My master's was in health communication. And so we talked a lot about health literacy, health numeracy, like people's ability to understand numbers impacts
okay.
your ability to take your medicine,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Um, and how do you do plain language healthcare explanations? And so it is so important and often overlooked. So that is really what a cool way to spend your working days, your working time.
Yeah. No, it's very similar to that. And it's funny because I didn't graduate high school and say, like, I want to do technical writing.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, when I first graduated, I wanted to do film. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And then I got into creative writing, and I loved creative writing. And I used to write quite a lot in high school, um, and after high school. But then one of my professors said, "Oh, well, you have a really great way of like writing plainly," which it sounds like a backhanded
Mm-hmm.
compliment when you're trying to be a creative writer.
Right.
But no, there's a whole career for people like that. So, you know,
Yeah,
it
because
worked
so
out.
many people can't do it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, Kristen, we are not just here to talk about technical writing. We're here to talk about a different type of writing today. And I am going to pronounce it so wrong. Dramione? Dramione fan fiction?
Dramione fan fiction, yes.
So, all right, give us like a synopsis of what it is, and then we're going to dive in.
Okay, great. So, if you're familiar with the Harry Potter series, there's so much Harry Potter fan fiction out there. It's ridiculous. But this is a very niche area, where it's focused on Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger as a couple,
Okay.
and specifically that type of fan fiction.
So, fan fiction is when writers expand a universe and they write the stories they wish had been included, or they take, I know there's a lot of shipping, right? Which is when you imagine a relationship between two characters.
Uh-huh.
So it's when people take the characters into their own hands and rewrite the universe. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, definitely. That would definitely be it. And I think what I love about it is that, I think there's been such an evolution of fan fiction that I found recently, because I was definitely reading fan fiction like 10 years ago when,
Mm-hmm.
and in high school as well. But it was very much like, playing out fantasies, playing out stories. At least it felt like that. And now I see that there's a lot more collaboration between writers. So, they're all kind of creating a story together, but in their own way, especially
Mm-hmm.
with Dramione. And there's this term that I came across recently, fanon, where, you know, we always talk about what's canon, right?
Right.
We're always looking at with Harry Potter and Pottermore and what's being uploaded there, what is canon, what's not considered canon, and there's, you know, disagreements across the Harry Potter fandom. But then there's also fanon. So there's canon that has been created by the fans through this fan fiction, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So things like Draco Malfoy is left-handed. Like, you will come across that wasn't mentioned, I
Right.
think, in the books. But every single fan fiction you come across with Hermione, he is left-handed now.
Okay.
You know, things like that.
So fanon, I've heard people talk about headcanon.
Mm-hmm.
Is that maybe just, is headcanon is just, I as an individual, I believe this thing is true in the universe, but fanon is when a group of fans have all agreed this should be canon.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Does fanon ever get elevated to canon?
Oh, well, in Supernatural it does.
Okay.
Only because the fans are so I don't want to say outspoken because that's a negative term, but for lack of a better one, outspoken. And, you know, they let the writers know, and the writers really interact with the fans
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, get ideas. And so there's a lot of like metafiction in Supernatural that
Mm-hmm.
directly addresses some of the fans' wants or some of what they're saying about the characters and things like
Okay.
that. And then I know, because I've been spoiled, I haven't seen season 15 yet, but there is one thing that has been like heavily, you know, shipped in like the Supernatural fandom, and they made it come true in season 15.
Okay.
So I think, yes, I think that's a possibility.
Right. Especially with a TV show or a more of a, perhaps a living document, because
True.
Harry Potter, our books, you know, the series is done. J.K. Rowling, another, you know,
Another problematic creator.
Who she continues to write in the universe of Harry Potter, but like the books are the books and they're locked.
Yeah.
Except for that she kind of is like, oh, but this person was gay, and oh, but this person was like, this was happening off page.
Right. Yeah, there is still a little bit of that. And then I was trying to track down, in preparation for this discussion, I was trying to track down this interview that I've heard that she's done, but this is, again, I have not read the actual interview, where she does mention that she had contemplated Draco and Hermione getting together,
Mm-hmm.
but decided not to go through with that for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
So there are little things like that also that I think the Hermione like fandom kind of latch onto.
Yeah. So let's time travel a little bit. And first, tell me about how you got into Harry Potter.
Okay. Well, the first movie came out when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
And my 5th grade teacher read the book to us. And it was done from there.
Yeah.
I just continued reading them and loving them. And it was right before the 5th book came out that I discovered MuggleNet.com.
Okay.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Well, MuggleNet.com was a website started by this 12-year-old Harry Potter fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his name's Emery. And he just started like accumulating all the information that was out there about Harry Potter. And now it quickly grew to like the #1 Harry Potter source website within a matter of like a few years.
Yeah.
And it's the place to go. Like if you if you want any sort of like information about Harry Potter, essentially.
Wow. Yeah, I opened it up, mugglenet.com, since 1999.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And are you, Leah, are you familiar with the books as well, or?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I read them all. I was a hall director in Durango, Colorado, and the head of our cafeteria's daughter is probably about your age, and she was reading these books called Harry Potter. And so he brought in the books she had already read and like loaned them to the hall directors. And so I was always, so then I read all of her books, and I read them, the ones that she had. So this is like 99, 2000. And then I was borrowing her books. Like, she would get the book first and then I would read it after her. But I've seen some of the movies. I haven't seen all of them. And I have I've got books 1 and 2. I've listened to all of them on audiobook in the last couple years. And I borrowed them on Libby, so it would take like months to get them. But I have 2 of the books on Audible. 1 and 2 I have on Audible.
Mm-hmm.
So I will sometimes use Harry Potter just to go to sleep.
Oh.
Just like set it for a couple hours because I don't have to listen closely. If it impacts my dreams, that's fine. So yeah, I am familiar with Harry Potter. So.
Okay. Just wondering. Yeah, no, I definitely, like I said, the movies came out like as I grew up. So they were very closely related to my experience. And then another thing that happened around, when I was 14, 15 is that I discovered online RPG role-playing. And so essentially, to those who are unfamiliar with this, it's kind of like fan fiction writing, but you're doing it with other people. So it's a website where you have a forum and you select a character that you want to play. And then you interact with other characters in, perspective of your character. And it's essentially like writing. So even though when I first began, I was writing like one-liners, like so-and-so walked into the Great Hall and sat down, and that's it. It actually, I think, helped my writing skills because by the end of it, I was like writing 8 to 12 paragraphs long, to describe like everything going on with this character, how her day yesterday was impacting her day to day, what she was thinking about and feeling, etc. And it's essentially a way to create fan fiction with other people.
And that was all within, that was like Hogwarts RPG specifically, or was it a different? You said she walked in the Great Hall, so I was assuming Hogwarts, but
was
it a different setting or?
There's very different settings depending on which one you go on. And I started out in a Hogwarts one. I played Draco Malfoy on my first one. Because he was already my favorite character. But then I went to a Marauders era adult. So this is after James Potter, who's Harry's dad, and Sirius Black and Remus have graduated from Hogwarts, and they're fighting the First War.
Yeah.
And I played Evan Rosier, who's a Death Eater that's like briefly mentioned in I think it's Order of the Phoenix. That he's mentioned briefly. But yeah, I primarily played male characters. I just I don't know why, I just felt more comfortable doing that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So it just depends. I mean, there's all sorts of different backgrounds and plots you can do.
Wow. That's a corner of the internet I am totally unfamiliar with. And I consider myself to be a very online person. Like, I've been on Tumblr for a very long time. I've been on Tumblr. and Twitter, and I've blogged since 2003, but it's always fascinating to me how there can just be huge, you live in the part of the internet where you live.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And then when from your Marauders online RPG, so you're writing male characters, you are continuing to explore the world, and at what point do you either find the fan fiction that's happening outside of the RPGs, or do you take me a little bit on the path that gets you from there to Dramione?
Well, so I definitely read fan fiction in high school, and it wasn't just Harry Potter fan fiction. I definitely read like some Inuyasha fan fiction, for example. But I recall reading some Dramione back in the day, and it's funny because now I'm coming across some of the stuff that I had read like 10 years ago. And it's like, oh, I've read this before, and I recall it very well. So that's kind of, I think I just stumbled upon it, and that's really where I first entertained the idea of Draco and Hermione being together, which is blasphemous, I think, to a lot of people. If you're not familiar, with that shipping. I don't know. I really loved it. I love the idea of it, but it didn't totally heal my mood for Ron and Hermione, who in the canon are end up together. I was still a little like, oh, okay, well, I could still see Ron and Hermione being together.
Yeah.
Whatever. But then, as I graduated high school, I got my bachelor's, I started my job. I just dropped off of that universe. I stopped reading fan fiction, and I stopped doing the online RPG. And so it's just recently, like a few months ago, that I was on TikTok and scrolling, and a TikTok came up that was all about like this girl's top 5 Dramione fanfics.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, yes, like I remember this. I remember this love. And so I wrote down what she had recommended, and just, it just started from there, essentially. So yeah.
The TikTok algorithm is so creepy good. It's so creepy. It's so, I think about taking it off my phone almost every day as it picks up like gleams new information from my life and my Google searches and is like, oh, I'll give you this content now. And I'm like, it's too creepy, but also, yes, it is the content I need right now.
Right. It's exactly what I want in my life, clearly.
Yeah. So you get these recommendations and you go look them up, and that reopens this rabbit hole for you.
Yes. And it was quite a rabbit hole, because I think the first fanfic that I read a few months ago was Isolation by Bex Chan. And it's essentially a 7th year alternate universe AU, where instead of Hermione going on the Horcrux hunt, she returns to Hogwarts as well.
Okay.
And she's like locked into a room with, or, a common area with Draco. Basic settings up for all sorts of romantic things to happen there. And I remember reading it and being like very well impressed with the writing, and especially the plot machinations, because it does change the way the Horcrux hunt happens, but in a really impressive way.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh, I didn't know that fan fiction could be this good.
Right.
Because it had been so long since I read it that maybe it was just that I wasn't reading the right kind, or
Mm-hmm.
I was still reading at a high school level or something.
Sure.
But or perhaps it's that the writers themselves have like evolved in their style. But I was just so impressed by it, and I was like, oh well, I have to read more. And then I read The Right Thing to Do by Love Bitcut 8, which is a Buffy reference, her name. And that just blew Isolation out of the water.
Okay.
Like the writing is impeccable. It's beautiful. And it's actually one of a trilogy, actually a series. There's multiple side parts as well. And that trilogy, which makes up The Right Thing to Do, All the Wrong Things, and The Auction, are one of like some of my favorites now in the Dramione verse. They're written so beautifully.
And where, like, obviously I can Google these usernames and the titles. I don't doubt that I can find them, but are they on I don't know. I can't think of what it is. There was this like,
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I don't read it on that one. There are multiple different fanfic sites. I think the top 3 would be fanfiction.net, and then what how do you pronounce it? Like Wattpad.
Yeah.
I prefer the third, which is Archive of Our Own.
Yes.
And I think that's where you'll see most of all of this. Because the layout, just like the aesthetic of the website is much better. You can bookmark stuff better, subscribe to stories if someone is working in progress on a story. It's just it's a lot more like writer and reader friendly, I would say. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say that AO3 Archive of Our Own is what I was just trying to get out of my mouth.
Oh, okay. I thought you were thinking of I think there's another fandom site that I'm forgetting the name of. There are a few writers that stand out, and I mean, I can get into my recommendations or talk a little bit more about Dramione itself, because I mean, like I mentioned, Isolation and how that's a 7th year AU, and I think what I think some people might get nervous about is that they're reading about like underage students and that sort of thing. Like I have a friend who just watched the Harry Potter series for the first time. And then I told her about Dramione, and she's like, "Oh, but that's so weird. Like I just see them as kids." And there's certainly like sixth year plots and then 7th year, but there's also, I think, predominantly 8th year and an adult.
Right.
8th year being like after the 7th book, Hermione and everyone else returns back to Hogwarts to redo their 7th year because they didn't actually get to do it.
Right.
And they're by then they're technically adults, but they're still in school. But also you'll have my favorite plot, which is like the coworker plot. So this is like years later.
They're in the Ministry of Magic and
they're coworkers, and you get to hear about all of the stuff they're doing with the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. And it's very fun. I think I gravitate more to that because it's probably my age, but
yeah. So before recommendations, just tell me, what do you like about a Draco Hermione romantic connection?
Well, I mean, I think the easy thing to understand is like it's an enemies to lovers. It's there's a lot of references to Pride and Prejudice within the Dramione verse, which is I think a very similar love story. The two obviously have a terrible history, with Draco having bullied Hermione quite extensively, but especially with regards to what happens in Deathly Hallows, where Draco refuses to give up Hermione, Harry, and Ron to his family, and then he has to watch Hermione being tortured. And we see that he's visibly upset. I think that's often used as a way to show that he really was, just trying to not get himself and his family killed in those moments. Right. And so I think that leads to a lot of like what I call redemption Draco. He's just trying to seek his redemption and trying to do good now, and that sort of thing. But I mean, apart from that, like as far as their ability to like their chemistry and all of that, I think we know Hermione is very intelligent, of course, and Draco is usually written as very intelligent as well. So we know that he's intelligent because like we see that he's able to make it into Snape's mute level potions, for example, which Harry and Ron couldn't. They were only able to get into it because of Slughorn and his lower standards. So we see examples of where Draco is smart, although he's usually just a bully. And on top of that, I think there's often some like parallelism happening between like Draco with his scar, his dark mark on his left forearm, and then there's Hermione with her mudblood scar on her left forearm, and how the two, have to really deal with those scars and the repercussions of it and with each other. And so it's just all very focused on how they break through, the past.
To me, I think your summary that it's enemies to lovers, I'm like, okay, that's half of the Christmas rom-coms that Hallmark puts out, right?
Right.
Like it is the formula. Like you could do just a straight up Hallmark rom-com Dramione.
Yes.
And it would
and
work.
There's plenty of that. There is.
Yeah. Where, if somebody wants to dive in to this world of fanfic, you've mentioned a couple already. I will put these all in the show notes. So yeah, where should people read? What should they dive into?
So I already mentioned The Right Thing to Do, and that series by Love Bit Cut 8. It is one of my favorites. The Right Thing to Do is a coworker plot. And then All the Wrong Things is the same plot, but in Draco's point of view, which seems like it would be really boring, but it's not. It's told very beautifully and has a lot of amazing flashbacks back to Hogwarts years that just like make me cry. And then The Auction, that the third in that series, is actually an AU where Voldemort has won and Hermione is sold into like slavery at Malfoy Manor. And so that is a very dark fic, but also done very well. Just very good. Good stuff.
Okay.
My absolute favorite, I would say, is Manacled by Senlin Yu. And it's also a very similar plot in that it's a Voldemort wins, dark AU. Hermione is sold into slavery for Draco. But that one has a twist that comes. That is, I won't give it away. But I mean, the entire fiction had me like just on the verge of like a nervous breakdown.
Wow.
And I'm not the only one. Like others have felt like this, but I truly did feel like kind of depressed at the end of reading it. It just ends so bittersweet. And it's really great. And it's actually 77 chapters long. It's very long.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So these are like really like works of fiction. Like you can find one shots, which, one chapters, you can find like short ones. Manacled is 77 chapters long. It's about 300,000 words. And like the right thing to do is much shorter than that. But
Okay.
yeah.
Because they're riffing on IP, like people can't run ads along these, right? There's no commercial benefit to the writers.
No, it really is just for fun.
Yeah.
There are some individuals who will bookbind these, or like the writers themselves have made their works available in PDF format so people can bookbind them themselves.
Right.
I'm trying to search for someone to bookbind it for me because I'm not good at crafts, but I really want like these fictions to live in my hands.
Yeah.
But if you see pictures of them, they're like thick books, you know,
Wow.
they're as thick as Harry Potter books essentially. And yeah.
Wow. So I might have interrupted you. Did you have other recommendations?
There's so many good ones. I mean, when I tell you that, like, I read how that same experience when I read Isolation, and then was like, oh, well, this is the best that's going to be. And then I read The Right Thing to Do, and I was like, well, this is the best it's going to be. And then I read Manacled. Like, that keeps on happening, you know, where I'm like, oh, there are so many good ones. But I think the other ones that I wanted to mention are One and Done, and a work in progress called Love and Historical Accidents by Pacific Rimbaud, who is just one of my favorite Dramione authors, and she writes other stuff as well. Love and Historical Accidents is a co-worker plot where Hermione and Draco work in the Department of Mysteries with time turners, and they accidentally get sent back to like Pride and Prejudice era, essentially. Yeah. And they have to like pretend to, you know, be someone's cousin essentially, and dress up and, you know, be part of society while they try and figure out the time turner stuff again. But it's essentially a historical rom-com. Pacific Rimbaud's writing is so hilarious. Like, she makes me laugh so much, and it's some of the funniest stuff I've ever read.
Wow.
Yeah, so I highly suggest her work because she's quite amazing.
That's super fun. There's an author I often recommend, in part because during COVID I like lost my ability to read books.
Same. Yeah.
Like, it's so hard. But there's this author I love. His name is Jasper Fforde. And he wrote a series called the Thursday Next series. And she is book police. And her dad was a time cop. So people in the book police go in and out of book world solving crimes.
Oh.
So one of the books is called The Well of Lost Plots. So the mechanism of the world is that all of the characters in all of the fiction we read live in a world together. They live in a library. The Cheshire Cat is the librarian.
Oh my gosh.
And if your page isn't being read, you can be in town hanging out with other characters. But if you're being read, you got to like be in your book. So people that are in popular books that are always being read never get to hang out in town, but people in books that are hardly ever checked out or hardly ever read, they get to like get up to a lot of trouble in book world.
Oh, wow. And I love that.
The first book is called The Eyre Affair. And in it, the original manuscript of Jane Eyre is stolen. And if you change the words in the original manuscript, all copies of the book change.
Oh, okay.
So I love that. I love a time travel. I love a like in and out of. So while they went back to the time of Pride and Prejudice, they're not going into the book of Pride and Prejudice, but that's what it makes me think of. This like flexibility of book universes and how they might all connect backstage.
Right. Have you, that reminds me, have you seen Lost in Austin before? It's a
No.
BBC miniseries.
No.
It's where this modern day girl, it gets transported into Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
And Elizabeth Bennet like takes her place in the modern day world, and it's just about her like messing up everything. So like she kisses like someone and they're like appalled.
Oh no.
Like
Right.
they're their like dignity is completely broken essentially. And so it's pretty hilarious, but it reminds me of that. Quite hilarious.
That's fun. There's also wasn't there a new like Emily Dickinson, like HBO Max or something did? I didn't see it, but I know that Jason Mantzoukas played a bee.
Well, Emily Dickinson and Jason Mantzoukas, I'm in. I gotta find it, whatever it is.
I now at this point in COVID, I have access to many more streaming options than I did when it came out. I'm gonna find the name of it really quick. Oh, it's called Dickinson. It's on Apple TV.
Okay.
And Jason Mantzoukas plays a giant talking bee.
Well, I'll definitely have to look it up then.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Like I was surprised by how good these fictions can be, and they're not just. I think when I was thinking about fan fiction, I was thinking about just lowbrow reading. You know, and I think there's such a like a difference between lowbrow and highbrow, or at least such a barrier between the two for the longest.
Yeah.
But I think what makes this fiction so amazing is it's not just written so well, but it's also, I mean, it's women writing literature for women. It's collaborative, like I mentioned with Fanon, and all of these writers interact with each other. There are artists also that interact with the writers, and they'll do collaborations and get inspiration from each other. And so it's this community of creators essentially. And so I think, those are my main recommendations, but also I have to mention that there's also a group that is doing audiobooks for all of these Dramione fan fictions.
Whoa.
Yes. And I just started helping them out with some editing as well.
Yeah.
And so their name is ETL Echo, ETL standing for Enemies to Lovers.
Okay.
And so you can actually find them, on Instagram and YouTube and Spotify as well at ETL Echo Audiobooks. And so they have the right thing to do. They're doing all the wrong things right now. And I'm right now editing the auction for them. And but they have others as well. So, if like you want to get into this world, but you don't want to commit to sitting down and reading it.
Yeah.
Just want to listen, I would recommend that.
Wow. And are they doing one person doing the whole read through, doing their own voices, or have they done a little bit of voice acting and do they get a few people involved?
It's funny because I think it started with Trish, who's the main voice reader, and she does the whole thing. So like the right thing to do, she did the whole thing. And Hermione is like spot on. Like she sounds like Emma Watson.
Wow.
And so so she changes her voice for each character and stuff. But now they're bringing in more voice readers to kind of try and push out more content. And so it's a whole team, of readers and editors now as well. And in good quality too, like, it's very well done. And so I think I mentioned it to someone on the Discord, and they were like, wait, you're saying there's Dramione fan fiction audiobooks? Like, this is a thing? It's like, yeah, this is a thing. It's insane.
Man, that's so cool. Because listening I can do, and I'm going to start commuting again soon. So my audio time is about to increase.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Until like until this summer though, I lived alone. So if I wasn't working, I had a podcast playing at all times for company. And now my nephew lives with me. So I have like real person company, which is nice. Which is
Yeah,
really
sometimes it's nice.
Yeah.
No, I'll definitely share the link. So for the show notes as well. And
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
That's what a nice way to use some of your podcasting skills to get into audio editing.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think we're kind of slowing down with Supernatural and finding our own personal projects. And this is mine. So I have a way now to contribute to this obsession, essentially, in some way.
So you have not written any Dramione?
I have not, but I'm trying to now.
Okay.
So, I haven't creatively written in a long time. I used to write short stories and poetry and, all sorts of things before. And then I just got busy with life, So, but I'm trying to get back into it. And so again, I think that's part of our want to do some personal projects and kind of reinvigorate some passion. Because my co-host is art, so she likes to paint and draw and all that sort of thing. So she's trying to get it back into that.
Yeah, I feel that. The podcast for me has been my COVID hobby. I started doing this last Memorial Day was when I recorded my first interviews. Now I'm just trying to make sure that it is something as the world, in this brief moment when the world is open again, before the next shutdown comes.
Right.
So trying to like get out and see friends and just like do a little bit of outside of the home living, but also trying to, find the energy and the focus to do creative projects and, like a comic I wrote was in an anthology that won an Eisner Award on Friday night.
Oh my God. Congratulations.
So that's super exciting. Thank you. And so now the person I did the person who did the drawing for it, who did the art, we're like, okay, what do we do next?
Yeah.
We were just, it was an anthology and it won best anthology of the year. But it's got us excited to try and find other stories to like collaborate on.
Yeah. And that's just so exciting to be able to put something out into the world because, there's something about, not just doing something for yourself, which I think is the first lesson with fan fiction. It's like, don't write what other people want you to write, write what you want to write. And I'm sure maybe with the comic too, but, to have it be put out there and people look at it and appreciate it. That's exciting.
It's really exciting. Changing gears slightly as we start to wrap up, what are other podcasts? So obviously I know you listen to the Doughboys because that's how we know each other.
Yes.
Is that like the podcast you listen to? Are you a big podcast listener?
I was a big, not that I'm not anymore, but how did this get made? I love so much. I love Jason. I love Paul. Yes. I want I'm the Paul of my group shirt. Cause I feel him.
Yeah.
And of course I love June. So that's my favorite podcast, I would say. I've kind of slowed down. Like I'll go through phases where I'm like either listening to music or listening to podcasts or listening to audiobooks. And I can't keep up with like all three.
Yeah.
So right now I'm kind of like not away from podcasts, but that one. And then I saw that you had KTP on.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan.
Yes.
I love him.
He is as nice as you wanted him to be. I just wrote him through his website and he wrote me back a few weeks later and it went to my spam and luckily I checked. Yeah, so he was on talking about Bruce Springsteen and he is so nice and so genuine Yeah, he's great. Kevin T. Porter is a very good human being.
I love him. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of his work as well with Demi on Gilmore Guys, which I had never seen Gilmore Girls before until Jason was like, guys, you got to listen to Gilmore Guys. And I was like, okay, well, I'll listen to this. And then also I'll watch Gilmore Girls for the first time.
Yeah.
No, went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, for me it was Gilmore Guys was the podcast that got me into How Did This Get Made?
Okay.
So I listened to when they announced the Gilmore Girls reboot was coming out, I was like, oh, I should get back into Gilmore Girls. What can I do? And I was like, oh, here's a podcast, Gilmore Guys, haha. And I just picked a random episode and it was Jason's. And I was like, who is this guy? And then I went down a Jason Mantzoukas rabbit hole.
Why is he saying that he wants to fuck Lorelai so bad? Yeah.
I was like, I gotta know this guy a little bit more. And then I landed on How Did This Get Made? And I'm a huge fan. I've been to a bunch of live shows and I've been on Paul's Twitch a couple times. Yeah. And yeah, How Did This Get Made is like the cornerstone of my podcast listening empire.
Yes. Yeah. Same. It's the foundation.
Yeah.
You know, I just got led because also of Gilmore Guys was where I heard about Doughboys.
Yeah.
During their whole Chili's tangents.
Yes.
And so yeah. So I think I would say those are like my top listens. I don't, there's a few others here and there, but not really that I primarily listen to.
Yeah. Is there anything about Dramione that I haven't asked you that if we hang up, you'll be like, oh, I can't believe I didn't say this?
No, I think we went over it. I just, even if you're not into Draco Hermione, I would say give it a chance if you're a Harry Potter fan, and but also that there's other ships out there. There's a big Panville community, Pansy Parkinson and Neville Longbottom.
Okay.
That I'm barely like getting into and trying to figure out. So there's plenty out there for anybody.
Do you think you have to have read all the Harry Potter books to enjoy these fanfics?
I don't think so. There's a lot of jargon that might be confusing for some people, but a lot of it's made up too. Like people are adding, terms to the lexicon with these fan fictions. That was a concern for me because I recommended some to my friend, and I know that one fic talks a lot about the DMLE, and that stands for the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. And I knew, okay, well, she might not know that, so I might have to explain what that is. But I mean, these fictions are really about the characters living in this world. Yeah. And there's others that are like Draco and Hermione as muggles. So it's like taking the characters and then putting them into other worlds.
Wow. Okay.
It's just everyone, we're all in love with the characters themselves. Yeah. I think that's the most important thing. So that's the good thing about these fictions. It's a lot of character development. It's focused on the character. It's not just plot, which could be then problematic for some people who just don't understand.
Right. Right. Great. Well, Kristen, this has been a blast. Where can people find you online? If you want to be found online.
I would recommend going to @Highway to Hell podcast on Instagram and Twitter. We have not been updating, but you'll just find like all of our old stuff. We also have a website, www.highwaytohellpodcast.com. And again, it's Highway HWY. So I would say give us a listen if you like Supernatural. Our first season episodes are shit because I did not know how to edit, or we would forget to turn our mics on.
Mm-hmm.
But, we had a lot of fun going through those. And then, of course, at ETL Echo Audiobooks, which is what I'm working on now. And so, yeah, that's where you can find me / my projects.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. This has been a blast, and I will see you in the Discord.
Yes, thank you, Leah. Thank you for having me on to fangirl over this hot couple.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.